Hey guys, what's going on? Sherman here. I have another fantastic knife to review for you guys today. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Spyderco Yojimbo 2. Yojimbo means bodyguard in Japanese. And it's really a fitting name for this knife. This knife being primarily designed for self-defense. Now, as a lot of you guys know, this knife was designed in collaboration with martial artist Michael Janich. Now, if you guys are not familiar with him, you should be. Michael Janich has studied and mastered and taught many martial arts styles. Aikido, boxing, savate, eskrima, arnis, taekwondo, just to name a few. Now, I don't know, what degree, if he's a black belt in any of those, but he has studied and taught those martial arts and more. He was also in the U.S. Army for 9 years in intelligence, and he's also studied under Colonel Rex Applegate. Colonel Rex Applegate, if you guys are familiar with the Gerber Applegate Fairbane daggers, it's the same Applegate. Colonel Applegate was in World War II. And if I'm not mistaken, he has developed many knife fighting and close quarters pistol combat exercises and philosophies. So, Mr. Janich had studied with him before he passed, and he has become one of the leading authorities on close quarters combat, both, like I said, with handguns and knives. Mr. Janich, I'm not sure if he's the founder, but I know he's a teacher in combative blade concepts, something like that. I'll annotate it if I'm mistaken. You guys should look up some of those videos, or martial blade concepts. I'm sorry, it's called martial blade concepts, and he has a lot of videos here on YouTube showing different defensive tactics using a knife, and it's really interesting. This guy, like I said, he's an Army veteran, so I can definitely respect that, and has 35 plus years of martial arts training under his belt. So this man knows what he's talking about. He practiced what he preaches, and he put a lot of his knowledge into designing this knife and many others. He's also done collaborations with Black Hawk knives, and they all kind of have some of the same design features because he's just a very no-nonsense guy. Like I said, he knows what's effective. So keep in mind, a lot of people have critiqued this knife, for saying, well, the tip's too delicate, and I don't like Wharncliffe for EDC. But you have to keep in mind, this was designed by a martial arts and self-defense instructor of 35 plus years of experience. This knife wasn't designed as an everyday carry, box cutting, rope cutting, whatever utility knife. It can definitely serve in that role, and I've been using it as such. It's been a great EDC knife for me and many other people. But like I said, it was not designed as that, especially not with the name of Yojimbo, like I said, Japanese for bodyguard. This knife was designed as a self-defense knife. So you can't condemn it for having certain features and say, well, it wouldn't be a good EDC knife, because that's not what it was designed for. If you want a good, like I said, this does make a great EDC knife, but if you want something that has more features you would normally see in an everyday carry knife, just get a paramilitary too. And I'm going to reference the paramilitary a lot in this review because these two knives are very similar in terms of materials and designs. So I just wanted to get that out of the way because I've seen a lot of people condemn this knife as an EDC blade. But I personally love it as an everyday carry knife. But like I said, it's not designed as that. So yeah, keep that in mind. But anyway, let's get into this review. Let's talk about the handle. The handle scales are black Peel Ply G10. The original version of this knife, the Yojimbo, was of course designed a little bit different, but it had blue G10. And I really thought that Spyderco should have come out with a sprint run version of this in blue. That would look great. But all the hardware, all the screws are recessed into the handle. You can see, so it's a very flat design, just like the paramilitary, the Mannix. A lot of Spyderco designs. I really like it. It's a really smart design. Typical Spyderco hourglass pocket clip. It's a great choice. It's just a good clip. Here again, they use it on a ton of knives. I think I kind of would like to see the deep carry wire clip on here. Just, it'd be easy to conceal a little bit. It'd be a little bit easier to conceal. And I just generally prefer the deep carry clips, but still great clip, perfect retention. And like I said, that peel ply is very grippy. It doesn't have the same texture as a paramilitary. It's a little bit more coarse, and it might abrade the pocket a little bit faster than some others. But it's like I said in previous videos, Spyderco does their peel ply different on every knife. I'm not really sure why, because this peel ply feels different than the Manix, the paramilitary, the military. It's different peel ply. It's a trip. But anyway, there's no lanyard hole, but that's not really an issue for me. You really couldn't wrap cord around that last standoff. Like I see, flow-through construction, so you can just blow down in there or blow compressed air down there to get the lint out. I like that. I love these flow-through knives with standoffs. But like I said, no lanyard hole like you'd expect on a lot of Spydeys, but that's okay. There's not a whole lot of room with that handle design. You can see that it is drilled and tapped for all 4 positions of the pocket clip, just like most Spyderco knives, but it's great to see it on more designs, especially with this being a self-defense blade, because you don't want to make a self-defense knife and only make it righty compatible. It's counterintuitive. So I'm glad that they stuck with the Spyderco formula of all 4 positions. So this knife can be carried tip up, tip down, left, right hand, which is great because Spyderco knives in general are very ambidextrous. You have the Spydey hole, ambidextrous, especially this compression lock, ambidextrous. Pretty much, I can use it left-handed just fine, and I'm not a lefty. Another thing about the handle is it does have these little milled out spots right here to access the Spydey hole, or the thumb hole, very easily. This looks nice, very nice, and does add a little bit of comfort. The edges are nicely chamfered all the way around. It's a very light kind of beveling, but it's definitely very comfortable. No sharp edges on this knife. As I said just a minute ago, and as you can see, this is a compression locking knife. Arguably one of the strongest locking mechanisms on a folding knife today, with a few exceptions like the cold steel triad lock. But I'll get into that, a little bit more of that here in a minute. But anyway, let's take a look at that blade. Gorgeous, gorgeous blade. Wharncliffe design, so it's just a straight edge like a razor blade. Wharncliffe design. The blade length on this is 3 1/4 inches, so that's going to get under a lot of states' knife laws. The blade steel on this is CPM S30V, premium stainless powder steel. So you can see right there, CPM S30V. Golden, Colorado, USA Earth. So it is a USA made Spydey, just like the Manix and the Para 2s and the military. There's Michael Janet's logo right there. Also, the blade is hollow ground. See right there, very nice, very deep hollow grinding. They started that grind pretty early too. About almost 3/4 of the knife is hollow ground, which looks amazing and adds, as you can see, very thin behind the cutting edge. Love hollow ground blades. And the more you have to sharpen this knife, it's going to maintain that thin edge profile. Because obviously the more you sharpen, the more into that hollow ground portion you're going to get. So actually the more you sharpen, the thinner the edge is going to get. Unlike a flat ground knife, where the more you sharpen, the steeper the edge is going to be. But I'm not saying that I prefer hollow ground knives. It's just nice. It makes for a very nice slicing knife. It's going to be a great slicer for you. And here again, this blade shape is arguably also one of the best blade shapes for self-defense. Now, I'm not going to get all into that in this video, exactly why and all the technical specifications, but just look it up. There's actually been articles in Blade magazine. I actually saw one recently with this knife, and it was written by Michael Janich, talking about the advantages of a Wharncliffe style blade in self-defense. About how when you cut into a surface, it's going to keep on dragging through it. The material isn't going to slide up the knife. Like if you have a belly, where you sweep, that belly is going to come down and away from the material. It's going to slice off of the material. Whereas this, it almost keeps that material all the way. It's hard to explain. I'm not really good at articulating my thoughts into words. So just, you can look up articles. People can explain it better than I can. So, but it is a great blade shape for self-defense. And it is a good blade shape for everyday carry for a lot of different people's uses. Like I said, it's good for box cutting because it acts like a razor blade. Good for box cutting, whatnot. Good for light EDC work. But like I said, I know a lot of people don't want a Wharncliffe for everyday carry. But also, it's going to be very easy to sharpen. Being that just flat design, it's going to be very easy to sharpen and touch up that edge. You know, strop it and whatnot. Incredibly acute tip, by the way. Let's see if you can take a look at that. I mean, this tip is scary sharp. I mean, it is like a needle. Let's compare it to the Paramilitary 2. Paramilitary 2 is on the right. It is just amazing. So like I said, for everyday carry, you might not want something like this that has such a delicate tip. Like if you do a lot of tip work, maybe you don't want this knife. Because like I said, the tip is very delicate. If you do something too hard with this knife, that tip is going to round off. It's going to get kind of blunt. But you can see the blade stock, same blade stock as the Paramilitary 2, but it maintains its thickness to right there when the hollow grind part kicks in. You can see it maintains its thickness and then just goes into that wicked tip. So, very wicked. I love the tip on this knife. But like I said, I've been carrying it for EDC. I have no problem with it. But I'm just saying a lot of people want more, I guess, strength in their everyday carry knife. And I can understand that. So in that case, you'd want something like a Para 2 that's flat ground, has a little bit stronger tip. So I'm not saying you can't carry this as an everyday carry knife at all, because I have been and I love it, and a lot of people carry this for everyday carry. But I'm just saying you might want to be careful if some of your everyday cutting tasks call for, you know, really hard cutting. You know, I see a lot of guys on Instagram, they, for some reason, puncture the twist-off caps on beer bottles and pry them off with their knives. Definitely don't want to do that with this knife. But this knife is also probably the smoothest knife I've ever owned. It's probably as smooth, if not smoother, than my ZT-0561 that I had. So like I said, compression lock, you depress the lock, just falls right back into the handle. Just the gravity, because the blade it does have some weight to it. So it's because of that thick stock and it keeps its thickness. Oop, I just poked myself. But I tell you guys, anyway, just the inertia from that blade coming down is enough to make it fold. Just depressing that lock and the blade falling, it's amazing. This knife is so buttery smooth. It's very easy to flick out also, which is something I was worried about when I first got this knife. Because as you notice, the Spidey hole is kind of small, and it's also covered up slightly by the handle scales. I'm not sure why Spyderco decided to do that, but it is. You know, especially with a self-defense knife, you know, you want to get at it pretty quick. But honestly, you can. I've had no problem deploying this knife, even with a little bit of that Spidey hole covered up. It's no big deal, because really you're just using that corner right here to catch the fat of your thumb on. So it's no problem, flicks out incredibly fast and easy with your thumb. Of course, you can grab it and slowly, smoothly open it. Of course, middle finger flick, very easy to do. So just an incredibly smooth knife. And by the way, that's with no blade play. It is absolutely rock solid, side to side and up and down. No blade play at all. So for it to be that smooth with no play, I mean, that's incredible. Ergonomics are fantastic on this knife. You can see it has the deep finger choil here that allows two of my fingers. I have a large hand. I wear a large glove, but I wouldn't say I have giant meat hooks or anything like that. So you can kind of choke back in this kind of grip. It's not as comfortable in this grip, choking back, because the way the handle tapers down kind of feels like I'm not holding on too much. But the way this knife was designed to be held was kind of like a hammer grip like this, with your thumb in that swoop right there. It feels so comfortable in this grip. But like I said, this is the grip this knife was designed to be held in. Because in this way you have perfect control, and you can do those sweep cuts or slashing very easily with this. So you get a lot of control. That's the reason for this big hump right here. And a lot of people don't like this knife because of the design. So people say it's ugly, but I think it's beautiful. But anyway, that's the point of that swoop right there. and it just feels so good in the hand. Reverse grip, just as good. Very comfortable. You get a lot of control with this grip, otherwise known as the ice pick grip. Michael Janich also trains how to fight or use a knife defensively in reverse grip. So just feels really nice in that grip. No jimping up. Well, there's a little bit of jimping on these liners, but they're covered up by the G10 scales, so you honestly cannot feel them. But if I know Spyderco, they probably did that just so they can tell people, well, you can't say there's no jimping on this knife. Spyderco can be kind of smart alecky like that. I love it. It's kind of like with their UK PK, because they use it for, you know, the United Kingdom, people overseas, people in Europe, and most places in Europe you can't own a knife of blade length of 3 inches or more. So what does Spyderco do? They make the blade 2 inches and 15/16. So 2 and 15/16 of an inch blade. Just right under 3 inches. So I'm pretty sure that's why Spyderco did something like that. But it's not functional whatsoever. You cannot feel it. But honestly, that was part of the design. Michael Janich has addressed this issue. It's not an issue, but he's addressed that point. And he doesn't like putting jimping on any of the knives he designs. You know, the Be Warned by Blackhawk he designed doesn't have jimping. And he says that in the heat of the battle, you know, when you have a death grip on your knife and you have to use it defensively, jimping isn't going to matter. You're going to be having a hold of that knife so tight, your jimping is not going to come into play at all. And actually with something like this, if you're using it in a thrust cut, you know, just stab, the jimping is going to abrade your thumb and actually cause more harm than good. It's just not necessary in a defensive knife. And I completely agree. I don't think that's a justification. I think that is just makes sense. You don't need jimping on a self-defense knife. Jimping only comes into play when you want good control, you know, for nice, easy control tip work for everyday carry tasks. But like I said, this knife was designed for self-defense. It wasn't designed with everyday carry box cutting in mind. So it makes sense to me. So I'm not sad that there's no jimping on this knife. It just makes sense to me. But like I said, very ergonomic. I love the way this knife feels in the hand. Could it benefit from a finger troll? I don't know. I don't mind it without it. I like this knife just fine the way it is. By the way, overall length on this knife is just over 7.5 inches long. So it's a good amount. It's a good amount of knife. And the overall weight is 4 ounces. So it's a little bit heavier than a Paramilitary 2, mostly due to the fact that it's a thicker blade stock. Well, it's actually the same blade stock, but it maintains its thickness longer. So there's actually more blade material here. And it does have nested steel liners like the Para 2, but it's not as heavily milled. So that's why it's just a tiny bit heavier. But it has a great balanced feel in the hand. It just feels incredible. It doesn't feel like it weighs 4 ounces. One more thing I wanted to talk about is, like I was saying earlier about the compression lock being so strong. And one of the reasons being is because a liner lock, when you're grabbing a knife, you know, especially if you're using it defensively, you're really gripping the knife. Like I said, you have a death grip on it. A lot of times with liner locking knives, what happens is that the meat of your fingers, you know, the fat there, you grip the knife and actually the pressure and the fat of your finger gets pressed into the liner, in between the liner of the knife and the lock, and what it actually does is it presses it over, disengaging the lock. And then what you have there is lock failure, which is not something you want. As I mentioned in my Paramilitary 2 review, the only part of your hand that the compression lock comes in contact with is this part of your hand right here. And really, I mean, you can flex your hand, you have muscles here, but right here, it's just skin, it's just flab. So there's nothing hard there. So you grip this knife and there's nothing that comes in contact with the compression lock that can push it over to disengage. So that's why it's such a good, strong design. And I think that's a good design choice for this knife. So yeah, guys, this knife is getting kind of hard to come across now. I got mine off of KnifeWorks for $104. I believe it was $112 shipped, which is a great price. It's a little bit cheaper than a Paramilitary 2, which is kind of funny because it's pretty much the same thing. It's just, you know, you have G10, satin blade, S30V steel, nested steel liners, same hardware, same pocket clip, same everything pretty much, just a slightly different design. The Paramilitary 2 is going to run you a little bit more. They're both fantastic knives. I highly recommend getting both. Like if, of course, if you see Paramilitary 2, I say just get it, guys. Or wait, I believe KnifeWorks is coming out with an exclusive, I think it's a KnifeWorks exclusive. It is a carbon fiber version with S90V steel. I think it's going to look pretty nice. So, alright guys, hope you enjoyed the review. If you find one of these, just go out and buy it. It's a fantastic knife. This would be a great backup self-defense knife for you guys. Maybe for those of you who don't want to carry a firearm, or maybe you can't carry a firearm because you're not old enough, or it depends on your state. This would be a good primary self-defense tool. So, highly recommend this knife, guys. It is great. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed the review. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, stay sharp, and God bless. Sherman614. Peace.